So I'll start over again. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. We're very happy to share with you our 2021 impact report. But I think most importantly, we're excited about the progress we have made on our approach to measure our impact from an output-driven way to an outcome-driven perspective. In the past, we had focused a lot on those numbers, bags, and whatnot. And now we want to focus on how and how much value we're delivering to the entire coffee industry. We are a company with a clear purpose, strong roots and boots on the ground, and a long-term vision. And so we are aware that to make coffee better for all the coffee value chain, from the coffee producers to the coffee drinkers out there, we need to have a shared vision, a shared understanding, and a shared responsibility. So the objective of this webinar, more than to show our impact to all of you who are online with us today, and I know you all have probably seen the report already. We want this webinar is to spark a wide conversation about the challenges we face ahead and how together we can work towards that shared vision. So again, thank you for joining us, and I hope this will be the first of many occasions where we can talk about shared prosperity for all of us. I think it's important that we have this conversation, and I encourage you to actually reach out with any questions that you have for us, and hopefully we can continue this conversation going forward. So I know you all have many questions. So without further ado, I will now give the floor to Pedro Manga, our Sustainability and Impact Coordinator. Pedro joined us in January of this year, and he was the first task he had on his hand was to lead this report together with the entire Caravela team. It's a team effort by no means, and I know that he's excited to, as I am, to share with you the results and to answer all the questions you may have. So I'll give the floor to Pedro.
Very excited indeed. Thank you, Alejandro, and thank you everybody for taking the time to attend this webinar. I hope, as Alejandro said, that this 20+ minute presentation will help solve some of the doubts, and if not, we will have a space afterwards. If you have been familiar with Caravela's reports in the past, we have changed the way we structure our communication. Previously, we were reporting based on our principles, and even though our principles and values have not changed, we changed the way we approach to communicate our impact. And this year, we aligned it with our pillars from our business strategy. Those are 4 pillars, namely people, product, performance, and planet, which are the 4 P's that we want to impact in order for our efforts to have a voice in the industry. We are doing this in order to homogenize the ways we communicate our impact internally with our employees as KPIs, internal KPIs, and externally to producers and other stakeholders along the industry. Other thing we did is align our efforts with an international accepted sustainability framework, which are the Sustainable Development Goals, and we want our efforts to be grasped or embedded into an international sustainability framework, so that we all again are aligned in the same approach. The first pillar is our people, and we understand people as bringing decent work and economic growth to all the people involved along the supply chain, from producers and farm workers and coffee producing communities to employees in Caravela in both import and export operations, and to aid customers in delighting the end consumers. When we talk about producers, during 2021, we worked with around 3,000 producers in 7 countries in Latin America. Most of them are smallholders, that meaning are farmers who own farms less than 5 hectares in size. And slightly above half of those 3,000 producers were attended by our PICA team. Our PICA team is our coffee producer education program. It's a group of professional agronomists that guides the decision-making process of farmers directly at farms or our buying stations. Besides presenting this data on demographics, on total women and young producers, the challenges we face in the future is to make more robust and disaggregate our farm activity, environmental, social, and governance data, disaggregate that data by gender and age. We want to assess in a more reliable way and in more detail and resolution the gaps, the social gaps that happen at farms and those communities. If we take a snapshot of our team during 2021, we grew our size in employees, but this year we wanted to present how are we located, or where are we located around the world in our 11 operations, from customer relationship offices to producer relationship offices. And when we see the distribution of Caravela employees by area, takeaway we want to bring here is that more than half of the employees in Caravela are in direct contact with farmers, either providing feedback on technical assistance at farms, or our quality providing feedback on the COP score and the product of farmers. Looking towards the future, we saw that we have a management team that with a lot of experience, both in years and in tenure within Caravela, and we have a non-management team which is a younger base for Caravela to motivate, commit, and train for the future. We want to base our development and growth opportunities and policies in this young base so that we can thrive in the industry. We have been growing in customers for the last decade or so, and we increased last year 30% our customer base when compared to last year. But more than that, more than presenting the amount of customers and where are they located, as we did this year, we face challenges in the same way that we want to measure the necessities and the needs of farmers in Latin America. We want to measure those and get to know better our customers, map their sustainability strategies and their willingness to have impact. And if we can match that willingness with the necessities that we measure at farms, we could create an ecosystem for customers and for producers and for Caravela, where we all can grow together. And hopefully, as Alejandro said, we can measure our impact beyond bags of coffee and US dollars in transactions. Our product is a synonym of innovation, quality, sharing the stories behind our coffee, and providing the best customer and supplier service that we can bring to the table. And we are focusing in providing or advocating for a responsible production of coffee, and that starts at the farm level. We are promoting better practices at farm level, and we are helping producers that already have excellent farming practices, but do not have access to certifications, to access those third-party international endorsements so that they could have access to higher value markets because of their efforts. We have engaged in this journey since 2018 in our operation in Peru, and extended our willingness to grow our own supply chain, certified supply chain in Mexico. And slowly but surely, we have been growing our supply chain in the rest of origins. And for last year, 44% of the farms we worked with or we sourced coffee from had sustainable certification. High quality is not improvised, and last year we could determine that the feedback to coffee producers that happens by the PECA team and the quality team resulted in 67 additional producers delivering the highest quality coffee that we source when compared to 2020. And in overall volumes, the company Caravela exported 10% more of coffee of qualities above AA grade. It's not only those volumes, but we also increased, almost doubled, or increasing 95% the amount of micro lot exports. And And this increases in quality, and this increasing in producers achieving higher quality allows to understand that those quality premiums continue to be the best way to increase farmer prosperity. And those higher prices and those farm gate prices are the base or are essential for us to achieve prosperity at farms. And we are using those prices to develop a prosperity monitoring tool that could help farmers to lever growth out of poverty lines, and hopefully will help in the future to eradicate poverty in the communities where we source coffee from. The first step towards this goal is to change the way we were measuring or benchmarking our farm gate prices. The farm gate price is the price that the farmer perceives at the gate of its farm. So it is the actual money, sort of speaking, that they are able to invest or spend in their families, with their families. So previously we were benchmarking us against the sea market price, and this time we wanted to change our benchmark. The first thing we did was comparing that farm gate price to the cost of production of farmers in each of the countries where we source coffee from. How did we estimate this cost of production? With the PECA model. It was a model developed by PECA, where ideal farms with all farm activities and the average techniques or practices that are applied in each country were costed, and those are results that we are presenting in here. The first thing that we notice is a seasonal variation or a seasonal seasonality in Central America did affect producers' income in 2021. The prices rose throughout the whole year, but Central America harvests their coffee in the first half of the year, and you can see how those prices in the left side of the graph are lower than the prices in the right side of the graph, which is South America, that in the second half of the year when they harvest, due to the continuous price rising, they were able to achieve higher farm gate prices for their product. Now, that seasonality affected Central America in the way that the farm gate prices were either just matching or even slightly below the cost of production. When we analyze this data, it allows us to see that even though some farmers in Central America were just matching or covering the cost of production, there were some costs that were not being covered by that farm gate price, and those costs were the costs of living. And that's the reason why in this report we wanted to present a new key performance indicator that is being developed for us internally to monitor our performance of the company. But we want to develop this tool to a level that it could be used to have confident discussions with other stakeholders in the industry on how price setting for farmers should be. They're always taking the price that the sea market is establishing, but we want to pass from a bottom-up approach to a top-bottom benchmark that, even though puts us in a vulnerable reporting condition, so to speaking, it's better to be slightly below a top benchmark that highly above of a bottom benchmark that is not measuring prosperity with farmers. So our producers making enough money. And our indicator basically tries to answer if the potential income of a farmer a year is enough to cover the cost of production of coffee and the cost of living of the family. The potential income of coffee producers is estimated multiplying the farm size of the producers times the average productivity estimated by PECA times the farm gate price that I presented in the previous slides. And for the cost of production is the PECA model. We use the PECA model previously presented, and cost of living this year, we are using a proxy from the Global Living Wage Coalition, which is the rural living wage. This is the first year that they presenter or published a living wage for all the countries where we are sourcing from. And that's what we use for cost of living. When we graph the Caravela prosperity income, we can see this situation. And our data reveals basically a situation of vulnerability for coffee producing communities in Latin America. 6 of the 7 origins where we operate do not reach the Caravela prosperity line. Only Colombia, which is denoted here in blue, you can see the legend of the countries in the right side. Colombia is the only country that rises above that prosperity line, and this is mainly due to the highest productivity from all origins, but also an internal transparency in prices where immediate changes in the international market are transferred to local markets. In other countries, there are mixed reasons on why they are below the prosperity line. In Mexico and Nicaragua, where cost of production were above farm gate price, we expected that gap to be big. The other gaps are mixed conditions in between productivity, price, but also the cost of living. How to close or measure that gap besides the gap is why we present this second indicator, which is the minimum prosperity price. And when maintaining the farm size and the productivity in constant, what would be the minimum price that farmers will have to receive farm gate in order to close those gaps and bring their prosperity at least to the line of the prosperity income? So they are varied because of reasons, and I hope that we can discuss those reasons during the Q&A. Providing tools for farmers to increase their prosperity also include providing tools for them to take care of the resources from which they depend for future harvesting. We divided our environmental impact or our efforts for the planet pillar into one, each the environmental impact of Caravela as an export-import operation, and the second one is the environmental impact of the farms when producing the parchment coffee. For the first part, we worked for second year with the One Carbon World Organization, and they accredited Caravela for second year with the Carbon Neutral International Standard. We make our scope 3 more robust. We keep reporting scope 1, scope 2, and we made our scope 3 more robust, adding more activity data about non-hazardous waste generation and including especially samples freight internally and samples that are cheap to our customers around the world. Besides, we have developed an internal tool that allows us to track the emissions by country and allow us to assess an environmental efficiency in kilograms of CO2 per kilograms of coffee exported. And even though Colombia is our biggest operation and the heaviest emitter, you can see it in this pie chart here in blue, it is also the most efficient operation from our producing relationship offices, emitting just 0.47 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of green coffee exported. We'll focus our mitigation and reduction efforts in coffee freight, sharing experiences of waste generation and circularity of Colombia with other milling operations in other offices, and creating more conscious business travel policies that allow us to reduce that 7%. We have offsetted the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions this year in a project in Uruguay, but for upcoming years, we want to develop in-setting strategies that allow not only us, but our customers and other stakeholders to inset their emissions not in random countries around the world, but rather hopefully down to the farms where they are sourcing their coffee from. And we want to engage with customers and clients in soil regeneration practices and agroforestry schemes, because for our second part of environmental impact, we measure the carbon footprint in farms. In 2019, we did a small pilot project with 60 farms in Tolima, in Colombia. And during 2021, we grew and scaled up that project to more than 660 farms. What we analyzed was very exciting. We saw that, as has been shared, and there is overwhelming evidence about it, the main driver of emissions at farms is the heavy use of synthetic fertilizers, mainly because of the use of the fertilizers, but also because of the production of the fertilizers. So the use of fertilizers is the main driver of emission at farms, but we also assess green assets in our farms. So not our farms, in the farms of coffee producers we work with. And we saw that the tree density, the amount of trees per hectare in those agroforestry systems have a potential of carbon sequestration that is very important, because it changes drastically the discussion about the impact of coffee when produced. We did this study with the Cool Farm tool from the Cool Farm Alliance. And when we projected the impact of those 660 farms to the 3,032 farms in all 7 origins, we got some information that kind of shatters the environmental paradigms of agriculture, that state that 35% of the carbon footprint globally is due to agriculture. But here we present that there is a vast difference in between traditional agriculture, full sun-grown coffee with heavy use of fertilizers, and agroforestry systems with low use of fertilizers. So analog to the prosperity graph, our environmental impact graph shows that 6 of the 7 origins we work with have a regenerative effect on the environment, meaning that they sequester carbon per each kilogram of parchment coffee produced. And Colombia, which traditionally growing coffee without shade and with heavy use of fertilizers, is the only origin that emits 1.3 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of parchment coffee produced. This situation between the environmental impact and the prosperity of the farmer kind of puts us in this big challenge that we face, where we need to find a delicate balance in between the farmer prosperity and how to guide farmers to increase their productivity in farms, while having in mind that those increments in productivity will also have an elevated impact on the environment. So the more we increase productivity, the more we have an impact on the environment, and that delicate balance and that particular education process is the challenge that our PECA team faces for the upcoming years. That was a hopefully fast recap of what we presented in the impact report, and we welcome your questions so that we can start the conversation. Thank you very much for your attention. I don't know, Mari, Julie, if we have questions.
I'll rejoin you. Yeah, I think there's a lot there. And so if anyone joining us today has any questions or even comments about everything that Pedro presented, or maybe even something that he didn't talk about that you saw in the impact report, we're totally open to questions. I think my one question that we've talked about a bit, Pedro, I had I got to help preview some of this impact report before it went live, was actually going back to the Sustainable Development Goal linking. And so oftentimes I see a lot of reports linking, company impact to like 5 or 6 or 7 or even like 10 sustainable development goals. Why are we only focusing on 4? Like, why did we choose that?
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, you're right. I mean, our actions, and we know that we have responsibility in all 17 development goals. Nevertheless, we felt that choosing 4 is better to focus our efforts into that respect. Yes, we have actions with solar panels that attain other indicators, but these are the core of our business, providing decent work and economic growth, fighting poverty, taking care of our planet, and responsible production of coffee. We feel those are the ones that will guide our business strategy.
Great. And Andres has a question for you in the chat. Thanks for the presentation, Pedro. Any chance to get access to the data reported or shared? And do you see options for further collaborations around hot topics emerging in your sustainability journey?
Thank you, Andres. I see all the chances in the world. Like our doors are open to all stakeholders or actors that want to engage either with environment, measuring social gaps at farms. We are open to every type of or any type of alliances. So if you have something in mind, just write to us in impact@caravela.coffee, and we will definitely discuss. I don't know what type of data you are referring to. If it is about carbon footprint data, we are going to release in the upcoming weeks 2 white papers, one explaining in detail all of our results from the farm carbon footprint, and a second one for our own export footprint. So that data will be disaggregated and presented in those white papers.
Oops, sorry, the questions are going fast. Gabriel Cadena asked, I would like to know if you had measured the environmental effect of organic coffee production versus the normal system of production.
Gabriel, thank you very much. We have certain data. We don't have it as robust as we wanted for this year, so that's why it's not presented. But it is an assessment that we are doing. We want to assess the environmental impact of an average farm and those farms that are actually certified by a third party to see which is the difference in between those 2 farms. We are, as I said, making more robust and strengthening our data management from data gathering to data processing, but hopefully, sir, in the upcoming year, we can present that sort of impact difference.
I'm going to keep just reading the questions out loud, if that's all right. Next question from Antonio. Thanks, great work beyond measuring impact, which is a great job. What kind of technical assistance do you provide to your suppliers to close the gaps?
Our PECA, thank you, Antonio. Our PECA team has a vast array of assistance from methodologies directly at farms or in our boiling station, individually or in group works. And we cover topics from cost of production to harvest fluxes or estimation of harvest. We cover everything that has to do with broca and roya, or leaf rust and cherry bug. and those all of fertilization or optimizing fertilization application for them, taking technical assistance on wastewater treatment service processes, on how to better manage their pulp or organic residues, and everything that has to be on the process that affects the quality, but also we give them technical assistance or guidance on their environmental impact. We explain to them their carbon footprint, we accompany them during the process, and we are constantly feedback them both on quality and environmental impact. We guide their decisions. Yes, sir.
Sorry. No, if I may add one thing for Antonio, as we've reported, 55% of our employees are part of our quality and PECA team. So they're people that are, working hand in hand with producers on a day-to-day basis. We have a strong group of individuals that are on the ground, and that's why I mentioned we have very strong boots on the ground with our team that is working together with those farmers on a day-to-day basis. And to additionally, we've developed an application which is also reported in the impact report, which is called Arabica, which is an application, a smartphone application that we developed a couple of years ago, and we continue to develop. It's used by our PECA technicians, but it's also available free to download for any coffee producers. And the idea of that app is also to help them close that gap, not only the technical and environmental gaps, but also the technological gap, if you will, which is a huge gap in coffee producers. And we've faced huge struggles in getting farmers to adopt the app because they don't have cell phone signal in their farms and because they don't know how to use properly use the cell phone. So we are aware of the need to close the gap, and we are working together with the farmers to close that gap. And hopefully we can work together with any other stakeholders to close those gaps as well.
Not a few things, a lot of things, right? Our next question comes from Jay. He says, it seems like there's a clear trade-off between the positives of organic farming and agroforestry, lower carbon footprint, better for producer health, less reliance on synthetic fertilizers, and the downside, lower productivity. Does Caravela work with producers to move them towards organic farming / agroforestry? And if yes, how do you help producers manage potential losses in yields?
That's a great question. That's the core challenge that we are facing, Jay, if I'm not wrong. PECA team, and why we are disaggregating this data by origin is because we face different challenges in different origins. We have very wide productivity gaps, like in Mexico and Ecuador, and some other gaps that are not so big, like in Nicaragua or Guatemala. So yes, we promote higher productivity techniques in those countries without, for example, in Mexico, 70% of our farmers or producers are from indigenous communities, and for their cosmovision, not because of money or for the cosmovision, they do not want to affect or manipulate the environment as much as Colombia does, for example. But we do guide on better pruning techniques for their shade trees, for example. We do not advise to take them out, but we advise better pruning techniques. We advise to produce compost so that they can increase the use of fertilizers, at least if they are organic. But in Colombia, we face entirely different challenges. We promote agroforestry, planting trees, optimizing the use of fertilizers, doing soil analysis so that when farmers use fertilizers is based on a scientific output rather than on perception, experience, or tradition. So our PECA team has those challenges, face the same challenge in different proportions for different origins, but we are very careful in providing assistance to the particular farmer if it is worth for him or her, and if it is not, we just advise what is best for them.
If I may add as well, it's a great question, Jay. It's a question that will need all of us in the industry to help answer those gaps, those trade-offs, if you will. Yes, as Pedro mentioned, producers, for example, in Mexico, they do not want to increase their yields. That's not something that they really, focus on, because for them it's the way they've been living for many decades. So, for example, in Mexico, they don't even prune coffee trees. They haven't touched them in 30, 40, 50 years. Those are very old trees. And when you tell them to prune them, they say, no, I don't want to. And we don't want to force them to do anything that is against their will or their cosmovision. So to actually help these farmers in Mexico improve their livelihood, there's going to be that shared responsibility that I mentioned at the beginning. If consumers want to protect those ecosystems and help the environment, we need to make consumers aware that there is that trade-off, and that if they also want producers to actually have be prosperous, they must be willing to pay more money for that kind of coffee. And that's a shared responsibility. We will work as much as we can with producers to help them increase their yields, but there is a limit to that, and that's why I think we need to work on a shared responsibility basis. Not only roasters, but also consumers, and of course we will try to do our part, and we will try to get farmers to do their part, but this requires all of us to work together.
Thanks. And thanks, Brian, too, for popping the video about our PECA program into the chat. Our next question comes from Niels. He says, congrats on the impact report and great work. One question I have, what's your thinking on ensuring economic incentives for producers linked to the insetting efforts?
Thank you very much. It's a great question. We are economic incentives for producer is a delicate topic. We would like to promote behavioral changes at farms that not necessarily are tied to economic remuneration. That's what we would love to. Nevertheless, we have been working with different organizations in developing insetting programs that will kind of signify a different income or an extra income for farmers that will endorse economically their efforts in their transition or adoption to better or more sustainable agricultural practices. But we as Caravela are very careful in the way we communicate these efforts, because we, as I told you, we want that behavioral change to be independent from money, because we feel that when the money is not there, then the behavior wouldn't be neither. So we push for a behavioral change based on preserving the planet, increasing farmers' prosperity, but a little bit independent of direct payment for sustainable efforts, for premiums for sustainable efforts.
Great, thanks.
And if I might add some further comments, sorry. We face a big issue here, and the biggest issue we've encountered is that a lot of our farmers have been doing all these environmentals for many years, and one of the hurdles of carbon credits is that if you haven't planted the trees in the last 5 years, they do not count for any carbon credits. So when we tell this to farmers, they will ask us, why is somebody that has deforested for many years and now is all of a sudden is now adding trees to their farm, they can get the results of the carbon credits, but I that have been doing this forever, I'm not entitled to receive any money for that. And that's a huge problem we face. So we are, as Pedro said, we are working with a few organizations to kind of help us sort out that issue, which we believe it's a great issue, because we would be incentivizing producers to actually tear down their trees and plant new ones to actually get that extra money. And so that's why also Pedro mentioned that we don't want to this to be a simple economic incentive, but it has to be a shared vision of everybody here, and hopefully we can sort that out in the next few years. But it's going to take a while to actually sort that out.
We're on a long road ahead of us. Andres, I'll follow up with you in the chat about data, but I totally think we can help out and share with that. Next question comes from Brian. Are you finding green coffee buyers asking more about farming sustainability practices and environmental impacts in addition to coffee quality when making purchasing decisions? I read that kind of weird, sorry.
Brian, afternoon, sir. It's a great question. We have been perceiving some increase in their willingness to engage with these topics. Nevertheless, as I said in the presentation, we want to proactively engage in measuring that willingness. So our next steps, Brian, is to go out there, ask our customers which are their sustainability strategies, how is their sustainability cosmovision, and ask them, as I told you, so that we can map their willingness to impact. And when we combine that with our maps of farmers' necessities, we can kind of work as an intermediary, not just to connect coffee deals, but actually as a reliable partner to steer resources from customers to farmers. So the first thing, sir, is just to measure that willingness on ESG, environmental, social, and governance gaps in our customer base.
That's kind of a sneak peek of what's to come. It's something that I think we're working on right now, to be able to ask our customers, hey, what are you doing and what's your interest? And so definitely the impact report's the first step, because we're like, hey, this is kind of where we're going as well too. Let's see, hopping down to the next question from Keith. Is the PECA team able to calculate the cost of production for individual producers, or do they just estimate for each country? Great question.
That's a great question. The cost of production that we present in the report are from the PECA model. That is, it has a resolution per country. Nevertheless, as Alejandro said, we have very strong force at field, and we use that team to gather data from particular producers. So we do estimate the cost of production for each farmer so that we can correlate that with the results we obtain in the PECA model. But since we have to be very careful in how we manage that data, and we, as I said before, we're making that data more robust and trying to grow our base on how many farmers have been asked completely about their cost of production. But we have both methodologies for cost of production, and also we are developing the same for cost of living. So based on the anchor method, we have our own estimation that is done by the PECA team to estimate cost of living in the different communities where we source coffee. And we also asked the farmers how much they spend on housing and alimentation, etc., and food, etc. But we use that to correlate both results. So we don't have just one source, but we have a three-point comparison between data gathered, primary source from the farmers, primary sources from PECA team, and secondary sources from third parties that have reported in the literature.
And to complement Pedro's answer, we've done this in the past with some of our customers that have asked for data about their specific coffee producers that they source coffee from through us. So we have the tools to actually get very good data from every one of our coffee producers. Having said that, there is a big challenge with cost of production, and that is related to the fact that coffee is a perennial crop, and so your cost of production will probably change on a yearly basis because of the different practices that they do, and it's also related to the productivity. So if productivity changes in a certain year or in a few years, cost of production will change. So we need to approach that with a longer term view, in my opinion. And but yeah, to answer your question, yes, we can get data from every single one of our producers, and hopefully in a couple of years or less, we can have we can share that information with our customers on a case by case basis.
Thanks. Our next question comes from Daniel, and he's asking, am I correct that producers in 6 or 7 of the countries you work in were on average paid below the Caravela prosperity income? Do you have a plan to improve this moving forward? You're muted.
Sorry. Yes. Taking into account the farm gate price that they received from us that did not reach the prosperity line, but it's not only based on the price, and all those countries have mixed reasons on why they are under the prosperity line. So as I answered before, the challenge varies by origin. We have a high product, for example, in Nicaragua, we have a country with the second highest productivity, and we can see the gap there is very big, but with increases of 40 cents per pound, we can close that gap and lever their prosperity. The prosperity gap closing, we can lever through price because they have already a high productivity. But as I was explaining, and Alejandro, Mexico has a recipe that is very tough to address because it is not only the lowest farm gate price, but it is also the highest cost of living, and the price is below the cost of production. Also, the productivity is the lowest. So all of them have mixed reasons. In El Salvador, a change of 7 cents per pound will bring that gap above the Caravela prosperity income. So as Alejandro said, it is a shared responsibility from farmers to make decisions and good decisions in increasing their productivity, from us to measure those gaps and create that ecosystem where everybody can thrive. And of course, roasters have a huge challenge in communicating to the end consumer that prices are the best way, or one of the best ways, to address farmer prosperity.
Definitely a huge question and a huge conversation as well. I need to pivot actually over to the Q&A tab because I asked people to go there and then I totally forgot to check it. So apologies. But we do have a couple questions in the Q&A tab before we'll pivot back to the chat as well too. The first question is from Audrey, and she's asking, for emissions reduction initiatives, who are the stakeholders and how does Caravela plan to engage them, from producers to roasters to buyers?
Okay, great question. So environmental impact is divided into our export imports and the farms. In the farms, as I explained, we rely on our PECA team in guiding farmers. We don't have, as Alejandro said, we don't have a saying on what they do, but we can provide them with experiences from other farmers, data from other countries, the expertise of our technical assistance team or education team in PECA. And that's how we approach the environmental impact at farms. from our side, we want to, as the presentation says, we want to master the measurement so that we can develop impactful strategies to mitigate. We are focusing on coffee freight because it's 70% of our footprint, and that's where we are focusing for mitigation. And for offsetting, we are developing strategies that we can inset our emissions in the farms where we source coffee, both for Caravela and our clients. So that's how we want to engage. The same as the social gaps, we want to better measure our environmental gaps, not only carbon footprint, but also biodiversity impact, water impact, or water pollution impact, so that we have an overall more robust environmental analysis, which is not only measured by carbon footprint.
So many things. Second question from Audrey is, what are Caravela's goals for the next steps in Colombia? And I think we'll maybe get a chance to answer this and maybe one or two other questions before we wrap up and get to the top of the hour.
In Colombia, as in environment, I will assume the question, our goals is, as I said, to really promote the adoption of agroforestry systems. We want to push not for farmers to pass from 20 trees per hectare that they have right now to almost 115 that they have in Guatemala, but we want for them to understand that planting trees would not only benefit their plants, but also the soil where they're working on, reduce the environmental impact, and we can work on that sort of buffer, of prosperity buffer, so that we can show data that it is possible to be above the Caravela prosperity line while preserving or reducing the impact on the planet resources.
Thanks. All right. Hopping back to the chat, Niels has a question about, in light of the upcoming legislation in key consuming markets, EU, US, is Caravela monitoring deforestation in and around farms that we source from?
Sorry, Julie, I missed the question. Could you please?
Oh yeah, the question is just more about, are we monitoring deforestation in and around the farms that we source from? Hot topic.
Deforestation, sure. as in land use, yes. As in land use, and we the same as I answered to Gabriel with the organic farms, we do have data about it. We felt that it was better to have a more robust data that we can analyze when we report these effects. As you know, land use effects might drastically change the day-by-day or the annual operation of the coffee, of producing parchment coffee, and those emissions or reductions are tied to actions or behavioral actions that could happen 10 to 5 years before the measurement. So we're trying to be very careful with how we analyze and report that data and how we communicate it both with roasters, but also with farmers. And that goes along with the previous question on how to engage with farmers for carbon credits and diversified income sources.
I'm going to wrap up with a last question. Johan says, I see so much on how coffee farmers can become prosperous through coffee farming, but the reality is that risking our entire livelihood on a single crop is unsustainable socially and environmentally. Oh, I thought that was a question, sorry. And economically, it's definitely challenging.
Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. And we are aiming for that. That's why our cost of living model aims to measure those different or those extra income to see how, from good experiences and that analysis, what else could we recommend farmers in different communities?
Yeah, and coming in at the end, Pedro's dropped us to the last page. I don't know if you want to close out, Pedro, but yeah, let's continue the conversation.
Yes, thank you very much, everybody. We could have not done this alone. Partnerships for the goals is the 17 development goal, but we feel is the most important. This is not something that Caravela could measure alone or could build alone. It needs of the collaboration and shared effort of everybody. So thanks to these organizations that joined us throughout 2021. I hope that more of you could join us next year. This year, let's continue the conversation. You can write your further questions to impact@caravela.coffee, and we can set meetings and discuss further alliances and projects.
Looking forward to continuing the conversation for sure. So thanks everyone for attending, and hope we have a good rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you today.
Thank you.